All right, let's do it.
Okay. Well, Simo, welcome to the show, and thanks for taking the time and being a guest and telling us something about you and your brand and the philosophy that's behind ambronite. So I
Pleasure to
always
be on the show, Bernd. Super excited.
I always start the interview with the same question, and that is, what is the essence of your being? So in a nutshell, can you give us, a little bit of your story behind you and where did you come from? Where are you right now? And what's where you're heading to? So listeners and viewers get a kind of a idea. So about you and your product and how it all started and what's your idea.
Absolutely. First of all, super excited to be here. I believe that life is about living your dreams and setting your own standards. And for me, much of that has come down to solving many of the problems that I found in my daily life in creative ways. And even Ambronite, as it today is a company where we help people thrive and really transform their bodies and their minds. It all started from a very personal pain, which for me was over a decade-long struggle with food, with eating the wrong foods, not eating enough plants, suffering from debilitating gut distress and stomach pains and problems that we were trying to solve with doctors for a long time. And much of that boiled down to incorporating healthy habits into daily life. And first of all, I need to recognize and be honest that as anyone, I'm also busy and lazy. So when I was in my early 20s, I noticed that much of the information that I have as a human, as a active person, as an athlete, as a creative person, much of that doesn't really get incorporated into my daily life as well as it should. Like all of us, everyone who has stepped on the path of becoming the best version of themselves recognizes this moment. You read a book or discover an idea or complete a measurement or make a decision or like a transformation goal, like I will now start eating way more vegetables and I will include this in healthy habit into my daily life. I'll start meditating in the morning. I'll write a gratitude journal and I will do 5 fasts within the year, and then nothing gets done. And I've definitely been there myself. And much of that is because we shouldn't fight against nature as humans because it's just useless. We should definitely fight with nature. We should have nature on our side, and that includes human nature. We're all busy and lazy, so let's think of the best ways to make life a lot better by incorporating better habits and products that really serve that. So that's been a big part of my journey as a human being, and Ambronite is one part of that, and making that change happen in the world, because I essentially started making these products for myself, and it was never supposed to be a company. So it's been a amazing journey in that sense.
Okay, so that's how most of the products in life or in this world, I think, come to existence due to personal struggle and pain and experience. So, and in German, we have a proverb that literally translated mean, um, yeah, that if you suffer from something, there's the need for creating something new. So I think this
Mm.
would a proper translation. So otherwise, you wouldn't think of new solutions. And as you mentioned, do you think, because you said people tend to be lazy, and do you think they also tend to be, let's say, overnewsed but underinformed
Mm.
nowadays? Because I think nowadays, well, I can remember a time where there was no internet. There was internet, but it was so super slow that it took, you could make a coffee until you could see
Yep,
a
like the
web page.
dial-up modems, like
Oh
with the
yeah,
beeping sound.
exactly. And so you actually had to go to a library to check for new information. And
Oh yeah.
nowadays, every pretty much everything is available to a speed of light, but people tend not to be that informed as they should be due to the access they have to knowledge. And do you think this might be the case? Because you said you, from your own experience, that you know, or people know a lot of things, but it doesn't come to their, it doesn't make it through their personal life because they know it, but they don't do it. So do you think this is a problem due to not to lack of knowledge, but maybe too much knowledge, flow of knowledge? Or
I think you hit the nail on the head, Bernd. I think you're absolutely right, and you're what you're describing there is the information overload and the overload of dopamine spikes that we get from our smartphones, from confirming articles that confirm our preconceptions online. We already know many of the social networks that we spend from 2 to 4 hours a day in are optimized to prey on our dopamine loops and make us use them more and more. And what has really happened, and what has happened in my life, I can notice that my attention span has shrinked from those days when we needed to go to the library and dial up the modem and maybe even download some files onto a floppy disk, because you had to be really, really concerned with the quality of information that you're digesting. And the thing is, today there is a massive overload of information, and also it shows, and studies have shown that people have less and less capacity to process even the high quality information, and there's a long leap from the high quality information to implementing that into daily life, from knowing that you should eat more berries and greens into actually having those berries and greens as a staple on your breakfast menu or on your lunch menu or as your post-workout replenishing drink. So for me, it has come down to the fact that I need to be very conscious of how I spend my attention. I just looked at my iPhone's statistics and how I use my time, and it's ridiculous. Like, I could never have imagined 5 or 6 years ago that I would be spending 5 or 6 hours a day on my phone. It makes absolutely no sense. To be honest, a lot of that is, of course, somewhat related to work, but then again, work gets interrupted. Like we know for a fact that people get interrupted up to 50 to 60 times a day, and to get back into a workflow that is actually healthy for our brains, it probably takes anywhere from 10 to 15 minutes to get back into flow. And that's as a positive case if you're well fed, haven't had too much coffee, have slept 7 to 8 hours. So incorporating these healthy habits is a massive problem for everyone, it seems, unless you're living out in the woods and writing away in a J.K. Rowling style, like completely disconnected, focused on your craft. And unfortunately, many of us who help thousands or hundreds of thousands or millions of people don't have that luxury as often as we'd like to. So we need to find better solutions for managing our time and health.
Absolutely, but I think this thing with the internet and this social media thing, and so, I mean, it's both. It has it's a curse, and it has a beneficial side. So it has a blessing and it can be a curse as well. And I think it depends on how you use it and for what you use it. And I think it's nowadays you cannot say, okay, as you said, I live in the woods, so it's kind of not possible anymore. So we have to find ways to deal and cope with stress and nutrition, and to use tracking things on your phone, for example, but not just for the sense of tracking, but to gain knowledge and to analyze things and then be able to process it, as you said, from a mental point of view and then from a physical point of view, where you say, okay, I collect this data not only to collect it, but to get some useful information out of it. And I always tell clients and patients that information is exactly what the word says. It puts you in a certain formation. So information can be beneficial or it can be really dangerous. And so,
exactly.
Do you think people have to rely more on their intuition, even when it comes to making food choices, where you say, okay, what to eat and how and when to eat, more than relying on social media and keyboard hero experts telling them that you need this and that and in this dosage? So what's your philosophy about these kind of things?
That's a really good question, and I think at the very core of it is understanding that you yourself are an individual with individual goals and individual genetic makeup, individual gut bacteria, individual ways of reaching those goals. So what we're not looking at is like creating a one size fits all type of product, but we've identified the 40 or 50 common denominators for human thriving, which come down to things like having sufficient amount of plants, greens, vegetables, which are essentially a part of any well-researched and fact-based nutritional profile. Now, it doesn't mean that everyone should start biohacking most of the hours within their day, should not go into researching this stuff, should not go into buying new measuring devices, even though it's a fun way of spending your time and money. It shouldn't be the end goal. The end goal should be how to make the most of the fewest possible choices and derive the most benefit out of them. And the thing is, for me, I've gone down the rabbit hole while trying to find solutions for my own food-related issues. It came down to extensive blood work, genome mapping, measuring my activities, measuring my sleep. I'm guilty as charged as a biohacker, but the thing is, not everyone should become biohackers. We should be very conscious of the investments we make, both on the cognitive side and in our wallets, to get the most out of it. And to be honest, most of it does come down to understanding the fundamentals. Having the nutrients that our bodies need is essential. We need to have those every day as part of our daily life. And it takes a lot of time to research, chop, and shop for them. So it's not ideal having to do everything from scratch. And the other thing that we often overlook, and that is becoming all the rage now, with the knowledge that the gut is actually our second brain, affects our immunity, affects our cognitive capacity, and almost everything from mood to depression to having a motivated start for the day. It all comes down to gut bacteria, and much of that comes down to our daily choices of meals. So we need to look at things like bioavailability. Are the foods that we're eating actually used and recognized and absorbable by our bodies? And this is where much of the industry and much of the knowledge out there has gone awry. This is one of the most common misconceptions that we see, that people, instead of fixing the fundamentals of their health, are turning to these hacks like I'll just pop a pill instead of fixing my food, and instead of vegetables I'm just having this or that synthetic supplement. But we all know that those are kind of a partial ways. It's like trying to stick a small piece on a massive hole in the hull of the ship, when what you should be doing is implementing those structural fixes. And what we're really talking about is getting all the nutrients you need every day in a form that your body can recognize. And for me, that's been a massive change, and the change that actually made a difference. So measuring everything and getting all the data, as you said, is actually a really good way of getting really overwhelmed and actually getting no health benefits. As you know, information, it needs to be in formation in order to be actually digestible by our everyday life, and so that we actually focus on what matters the most.
Absolutely. So to sum all this up, your approach is a kind of most bang for your buck. So you aim for efficiency, and well, I think it's more of a, when you say, if you get the leading experts of all nutrition fields and you put them in a room together and you say, okay, you are locked up until all of you agree at least in one thing, I think it would probably that they all argue, no matter if they're vegetarians, meat eaters, carnivores, or omnivores, or whatsoever. I think they would agree in one thing, and then that is that you should eat more vegetables or include more greens in your diet. But the thing is that you have a problem today, and with today I mean let's say at least the last 100 or even 200 years, that the soil.
You're loud and clear again.
Okay,
so
yeah.
It was on my side, the Skype crashed, so we're back
No
on
problem.
mine.
Okay, let's do this question again. So my sum up was that I think all leading experts in nutrition, if you would lock them up in a room and say, okay, all you will only be not released until you agree in at least one thing. I think it would probably that they say, okay, you should increase your intake in greens. So, but the thing is that nowadays, or let's say the last 100 or even 200 years, you have, even in Europe, you have a problem that the soil your plants are growing on is depleted. So, of course, you can say, yes, supplements are a supplement, so that you eat it in addition. But nowadays, I think it's hardly possible to get a sufficient amount of nutrients just from normal food, due to the fact that the soil is so much depleted. Let's say, okay, of course you can eat an apple a day keeps the doctor away, but today you probably have to eat 50 apples to get the same amount of an apple 100 years ago. And so people, as you say, they are lazy and they just don't have the time to eat this huge amount of greens to get a sufficient amount of minerals, electrolytes, and whatsoever. So that's where I see the benefit of, let's call it, I think you don't like the word supplement for your brand, but things of getting.
We can talk about real food supplements that are real foods in a convenient format.
Exactly. Okay. So, and that's where I see the big benefit of this, where you say, okay, you add it to your diet and to benefit and get in the most bang for your buck in a convenient way. So in a fast way, but it's not cheating. It's supplementing in a clever way. Would you
Absolutely.
agree on that? So,
I do, and you're absolutely right that the nutrient density of foods has radically decreased within the last 100 years, and that's exactly why we wanted to bring ingredients that are the most nutritious forms of each ingredient found on the whole planet. So luckily, I have the chance to, in my 20s, I worked in the U.S. and in Canada for a while, and I noticed that there was a massive lack of really nutrient-dense ingredients, of which we have the world's best reserves in Finland. Finland is roughly the size of Germany in size, but only 5.5 million people, which means a lot of forest and a lot of exceptionally nutrient-dense ingredients. And many of these, for example, the sea buckthorns, the yellow superberries that we have in the product are some of the highest concentrations of omega-7 fatty acids. They have an amazing array of micronutrients and also phytonutrients that cannot be replicated in synthetic supplement form. We use wild bilberries, we use cranberries in the product. Instead of green salads, which can have over 100-fold differences in nutrient density, we use stinging nettles and spinach, and even the sources that we those from, we have individually tested them to verify that they're exceptionally high density in nutrients, which means that essentially from one serving of greens, you can get 100-fold or 10-fold or 50-fold amounts of certain nutrients. And what we've also found out in nutritional science in the last 3 decades is that we don't only need the micronutrients that are typically listed in say RDA or European health recommendations, but we do need phytonutrients. For example, the polyphenols in plants, in olive oil, all of those ingredients that have been proven to increase lifespan, increase human health, immunity, and also improve the odds that we actually reach our health goals faster, whether that be burning fat or gaining muscle. So what we have really focused on is bringing those most nutrient-dense ingredients that we have found in the whole planet into a convenient everyday format. And these you can't even find in your ordinary supermarket, even in the fresh food section. And this is something that has unfortunately become a daily fact in daily life. It's really hard to find those high nutrient density ingredients unless you forage yourself. And that's probably not a daily option for most people. It's not even for me, even though I grew up foraging with my parents and my grandparents in above the Arctic Circle, where we source many of the berries. So it does come down to finding the best ingredients and making them available in daily life.
And I think, of course, for all the viewers and listeners, we're not, just for the records, we're not giving health claims, we're just giving information. Everybody can decide whether to apply them or not. But I think a big thing with the greens is that when you compare hemoglobin and, what's it called in English? The in the plants, the green in the plants, it's the
chlorophyll.
Chlorophyll, exactly.
Yes.
Liquid chlorophyll, for example, it's basically the same, but the only thing that differs is the essential structural molecule. Where in hemoglobin it's iron, and in chlorophyll it's magnesium. So it's pretty much chlorophyll is if you wish, or if you could say, it's green plant blood. So just to see the similarities between a human being and the plant, and if you compare a human being next to a plant, we're pretty much the same. And let me explain this, because a human has a built-in stomach, so he has kind of, let's say, sac that produces HCl, hydrochloric acid in English, and plants do it with their roots. So we're a kind of an upside down flipped plant, if you will, from just to, if we want to narrow it down. So that's where I see the importance of taking in those electrolytes, minerals, and all the things you mentioned. And that's the importance of taking in greens. And I think having a possibility to get it in with a drink and without all the pesticides you get from, for example, vegetables you buy at the ordinary store, the glyphosate and all the fungicides, pesticides, insecticides, and things like that. That's another great part most people won't realize, or just don't want to see, that is, okay, even if you're taking in these amounts of greens, you gotta flush all the toxins out, and that's another big issue in today's life. And so that's where I appreciate a brand that takes this and says, okay, we focus on something that is pure and not full of shit, because you can get a lot of good things, but when you piggyback all the bad stuff, so you're filling up with toxins and the good part, but if you cannot get rid out of it because you have, as you said, gut issues like leaky gut, for example. Okay, you're taking in good stuff, but you're polluting your whole body. So you gotta take care of it and make sure that you can flush out all the shitty stuff.
Absolutely, and the clean label ingredients in products, that was one of the main problems for me, actually, finding those products that are actually whole food based, actually absorbable, and clean label, so that I wouldn't end up backtracking my performance in another way, just as you said. And this has become especially bad in many urban environments, but the fact is that people just unfortunately don't even have the option of understanding the origin of their food. And on a philosophical level, I really believe that we've become disconnected from nature and disconnected from ourselves as parts of nature in the ways that we don't know and appreciate the origins of our food, and how much the origin of our food actually ends up contributing to our health and performance. And for the average consumer, if you and I were to go to a store, we would have a very, very hard time understanding where the food came from, how was it grown, in what kind of a soil, how many different vitamins in different concentrations does it actually provide to our bodies in absorbable format. So it's almost impossible in today's world for an individual consumer to be aware of the quality of the food. And that's exactly why we employ a very high grade quality testing scheme with a third-party lab. And we're also happy to provide any and all of our customers with the lab tests of the products to show that they're of the highest quality with very, very minimal amounts of any problematic substances. Any pesticides get instantly disqualified from our ingredient list. And this is becoming an increasingly problematic phenomenon in today's society. Now, I believe on a policy level, there will be a massive growth in the need for clean label, real food ingredients that people can actually trust, and ways that we can actually monitor that the producers are actually doing what they're saying they are for bringing whole foods in clean forms to the consumers. And I think this is something that I'm very excited about, because people are waking up to this fact and are demanding this in the US, in Europe, in Northern Europe, in Germany, in the UK. There's new legislation that needs requires producers to meet higher standards and add more transparency to the food system. And I think that's an absolutely fantastic idea. And I'm really proud that we can kind of, if we can work very hard to spearhead that development, that would be for the best of everyone's health.
Absolutely, and I totally agree with you when you say that. I think it's a kind of NLP thing. So it's neuro-linguistic programming that's going on in this industry. And well, I wouldn't go so far to say that they're all lies, but it's a kind of create a certain image in the consumer. For example, when you say it's labeled bio, it's bio meat. So bio means life in Greek, and the meat is dead. So actually it can't be something like a bio meat. Or when you buy free range eggs in winter, so I don't any chicken that goes out and lays eggs in the winter. So is there actually something like a free range chicken? But it's a suggestion that's created in the mind of the consumer. When it's labeled bio, it's automatically good or superior, but sometimes it's not. And when you say people are disconnected from the real source of food, let's dig a bit into this field, because your products are plant-based. And before I ask you the question, I sum this up, and because I totally agree, and I think when people buy meat, I think it's not the question whether to eat meat or not, because I respect when people say I don't eat meat due to ethical reasons, because I don't support this mass production and the suffering of the animals. But then my question arises is, okay, when they say I don't eat meat because the animals suffer and they are not killed humanely, who says that plants don't have a consciousness and don't experience pain? And so who says it's okay to eat a plant? But obviously, if you're not living from sun gazing, you have to eat at least something in this world, so you can go around and you can't live without harming anything. So when you're edgy something instead of around nothing, you cannot walk around this life and exist and don't hurt anything. I think it's not possible. But when you say people are disconnected, that's true, because when you go to the store and buy a meat, you have absolutely no sense of what you're doing, because you're buying a piece of flesh, and I think it's a whole different level than saying, okay, I have my own farm, or at least I do kill the animal before I eat it. So I say, okay, I have the awareness of killing something to eat it and to kill it because I need to kill it to prolong my life. So I have to take a life, and as indigenous people did it, and they prayed for the animal they killed, because they said, okay, thanks for being they were thankful for this animal to have it, and they only ate as much as they needed to survive and not to be massively obese. And so my question is, was that part of your philosophy when you said you wanted to create plant-based products? Or what's your philosophy and your take on eating meat, or being a vegetarian, or even a vegan, or as I say, shadow 5 vegan who eats nothing that has a shadow? So I mean, there are lots of different forms. So what's your philosophy behind this brand? I mean, you've mentioned a lot, like the quality, but what's your take on the plant-based thing? Is it your own philosophy that you say nobody should eat meat due to X, Y, Z, or is it more a holistic approach? Or
it really does come, and that's a great question, and it really does come down to the individual. And for me, I think of humans as part of our environment. We're not separate from our environment, because without our environment we can't really exist. But the thing is, going fully plant-based or going vegan is hardly an optimal choice for many people. Setting aside the ethics, we already know that from a personal thriving point of view and from a health optimizing point of view, which needs to be taken into account in any and all food choices, in my opinion. And for most people, that's the number one reason they start looking into this, as it was for me. Being a vegan is even though there are many justified reasons and a great discussion to be had there, is by no means an optimal choice for most people from strictly a health perspective. What we wanted to create with ambronite, because we initially when we started developing these products, and when I started developing these products for myself, they were not all plant-based. And why we initially ended up with a plant-based product out of real foods is because we noticed that this is the choices that we can help with people the most, because essentially most people right now are struggling with the amount of plants in their food, the amount of plants in their daily diet. And the thing is, people are not getting enough plants, but most people are not struggling because they're getting too few calories from animal-based products. So this is where we can make the most impact on people's health and on people's lives. And we already know, as you've talked a lot, Bernd, in your other work, we already know about the benefits of eating more plants. And this is actually the thing that people struggle with. So it's a clear thing that we wanted to make products for different nutritional profiles that help people achieve their goals faster. For example, we just launched a keto meal shake that's fully plant-based, which is definitely not something, oh yeah, there we go. It's definitely not something that people are used to seeing, a product that helps them achieve keto goals faster with a plant-based formulation. Because keto, as you know, can become really, really animal product heavy. It could become really heavy on dairy and overly focused on animal protein. And what we're seeing is that around 40 to 50% of people struggle with that, with their gut health, with their digestion. So it makes sense to bring products that incorporate the plants that we need anyway into the daily nutritional schemes. The same goes for our morning drinks, the ambro greens and ambronite meal shakes. So it really does make sense to make plants and great plant-based nutrition more accessible. And that's why we are a plant-based brand, even though we're not advocating everyone to go fully plant-based. I don't see that as a realistic goal, even though we're looking at some major choices that we're making as a species for our own health and for the health of our planet. We need to bear in mind that people are not going to become fully altruistic over a single night. What we're seeing is a need for better plant-based options than that. That's what I need personally, and that's what I want to share with the world.
So we're gonna talk about this keto thing a little later. So I just want to stick to the plant thing for a moment. So
Absolutely.
the thing is, I mean, with the plant things, okay, we to sum it up, you're not living a dogma. That's what you're trying to tell us. So it's not.
Exactly. And I want to say that I personally eat meat and dairy, but I'm living a plant-based diet, which means that I eat a lot of plants from 6 to 8 servings a day. And I've also configured my macros in a way that supports my own health. But most of all, I've made the habits easy so that I always have a meal to go to.
And I think, and I want to ask you about your opinion. So I always tell people, well, I not always tell, but from my point of view, is when people switch to a diet, for example, from being an omnivore, especially especially carnivore has a focus on eating meat. So they switch to a plant-based diet, let's say either vegetarian or vegan. So, and they say, well, I feel so much better and I feel incredible. I personally think, or I think that it's not the case because they switched to being a vegetarian or a vegan thing. And let's leave the ethical point out of this discussion for a moment, just to look at the nutrition physiological point of view. Is what they are doing is they first of all they raise their awareness and consciousness about nutrition, and they move from eating total crap like microwave and I'm not saying naming a special brand, but fast food shitty fuck. And then they say, okay, maybe this is not the best food choice. And then what they're doing is they start to integrate greens and fruits in their diet. And what they are actually doing is switching from an kind of overly acidic diet to a more alkaline version. And that's what's the actual benefit. It's not due to not eating dairy and animal product, it's because they have a much higher intake and water within the vegetables, which makes them more alkaline, and being more alkaline switches them, releases pain and less aches and so on. So it's due to the increasement on making more intelligent food choices than instead of eating not that much meat. So I think it's not about being a vegetarian or a vegan itself, because when you go to a supermarket, and to be honest, lots of vegan products are crap. I cannot see that. They are so full of stuff you simply don't want to have in your body. And okay, once again, I can understand if people say I don't want it because I don't want to support this suffering of the animals, but from a physiological point of view or a nutritional point of view, you're when being a vegetarian, you have even more you to pay attention, taking in EPA, DHA, some fatty acids, omega-3 acids. You do not get from food alone. And one argument of the vegetarians and vegans is, okay, you can take flaxseed and it's rich in ALA, it's alpha lipoic acid. But the point is, the body cannot convert it. It's the best conversion is 5%. So maybe there's some omega-3s out of, what's it called in English? In German, it's algae that lives in the water. So
yeah, from algae,
yeah,
like spirulina and chlorella.
Yeah, for example. Yeah, but I think to sum it up, what they're doing is they add the greens, and that makes them more alkaline. And would you agree on this point? So that it's more about the alkalinity of a body, switching from an acidic milieu to a more alkaline thing, and that's what has a real benefit, besides the fact that you add more nutrients, minerals, electrolytes, and things like that.
So what we do know is it really is as much about what you leave out as with what you include, because as you said, people who are starting essentially, and we know this from studies, by the way, whatever new nutritional plan people go on, it's typically causes them to choose higher quality ingredients automatically because so many of the fast food options go off the menu. I'm not going to attribute everything to the alkalinity acidity argument. To be honest, in my opinion, the jury is very much still out there. But what we do know is that any type of a increase in plant nutrients in whole food formats, and I need to stress that they need to be in whole food formats because, as you mentioned, there's so many poor options for plant-based foods which are pre-made, devoid of nutrients, etc. So we're talking about whole foods here. As long as you choose more whole food plants, you're automatically leaving less and less room for the bad stuff or the guilty stuff. And food for me shouldn't be about guilt, but rather about enjoyment and eating for pleasure, eating for taste, and eating for nutrients. And what I've witnessed myself, and with over 10,000 people who've managed to transform their health with our help, the thing is, it's not about becoming an extremist, and it's not about an ideology. It really is about making the 20% of changes that produce the 80% of results. For most people, it's eating more plants for more satiety, for more long-term energy, and for more long-term satisfaction, which means they will snack a lot less, they will eat less of the items that you mentioned. Whether or not a part of that is because of alkalinity or acidity, the jury's still out there. But what we do know is that it's the fastest way to experience these benefits and to make your stomach happy, to balance your blood sugar, which is a major cause for people to feel slumped, to feel brain fog, to feel even depressed throughout the day. So what we do know is that raising the baseline through whatever measure, whatever interest in adding more plants into your diet seems to be the consistent, proven way to tackle many of these problems, regardless of what you're doing with the rest. I do believe that there is room for also those choices which are not the healthiest, but in my opinion, the baseline is what matters. If you can raise your baseline, which means the average of your daily choices, it doesn't really matter what you do with the 10 or 20% of the choices. And I fully agree. It's very powerful. And whatever we can do to give better options to those daily choices that would erode health and instead build health, those are the ones that matter. And it's not about becoming an extremist in one way or another. I think ideologies and proven science, they don't work together too well. So I tend to stick to what works and to what's been proven in our field.
Okay, I like that. That's the Pareto principle approach. So, and
exactly
what I like too is the thing is, I've used the product and have recommended them to patients, but then I thought, well, over the last 12 years I've been into ketosis once in a while because I really like it and it's suitable for me. And then I thought, well, your products are cool, but you have nothing that suits a keto thing. And then you just came up with this keto thing, and I just saw it and said, damn, okay, so and
I'm just having one right now.
Oh yeah, cool.
So
and let's talk about a bit of this keto thing. I mean, keto is not something new. I mean, we all know, everybody who has a bit into this keto lifestyle knows that it actually derives from Dr. Atkins. So he didn't invent it, but it was the first, let's say, commercial approach of eating high fat, low protein and no carbohydrate thing. And what I like about you bringing out keto products is that I think ketosis is a very good way when you, for example, deal with a thing that is common in a lot of people, and that's chronic inflammation. So and obesity and metabolic syndrome and things like that, where you say, okay,
diabetes.
Oh yeah. And or a diabetes type 2 especially, and
Yes.
when you say so. The thing with keto is actually the people who should they need it the most, they don't have the ability to stick to a keto diet. That's the only really downside, I think, because you have to be very strict with the keto thing. But you've always already mentioned that you have a second brain, which is your gut, or studies even say you have more nerve connections in your gut than in your brain. So the question arises whether it's your first brain, and that's where intuition comes into play. When you say, okay, I have this gut feeling, is actually not just a feeling. It's something that tells you, okay, better not to eat specific foods or to eat food. So maybe we should talk a little bit of yours approach with the keto thing, because I think you didn't come just up and say, okay, I gotta produce something for the keto people. So, but because you had something in mind, and I think it's a cool thing to stick to this Pareto principle, where you say, okay, if I do know nothing about nutrition, I go to a keto diet, and even it's a kind of dirty keto thing, where we say, okay, I eat meat, and but I reduce the carbohydrates, the wheat, and the grains, so I can reduce all this inflammation stuff, which leads to leaky gut, which leads to problems and intoxication, re-intoxications. And I think it's the most simple way of eating, if you can stick to the keto thing, to get rid of a lot of problems. So what's your take on the keto thing? So because it also says on the product, fight cravings, MCT, burn fat, and so it's a real Pareto approach, I think.
I fully agree, and to outline to our listeners who are not familiar with our products, we make plant-based meal shakes for different nutritional profiles. Basically, we have the meal shakes that we started with, which are the complete meal shake, which covers all nutritional needs and quenches hunger for 4 hours, and that it has 5 full servings of very powerful greens. So it's essentially a breakfast or lunch product for that satisfies cravings and hunger for 4 hours. We also have the balanced meal shake, which is also a hunger quenching product for meal and breakfast with less greens. And we were asked for several years by our fans of the complete meal shake and the balanced meal shake to bring out a meal option that would help them live the ketogenic lifestyle. And frankly, there are 3 reasons to this, because we talked to over 500 of our customers, and we identified 3 things that are really hard on the keto diet, some of which you already pointed to. The first one is starting. So during the first 2 weeks, for around 60 or 70% of people who want to try keto, the first 2 weeks are just too much. People struggle to find the real foods, struggle to find the time. Many of them discover that it's actually pretty expensive to eat keto. They struggle going out with their colleagues for lunch because they're very limited in their lunch options, and going out for lunch with friends should be an enjoyable moment and not a part-time PhD in trying to select the right food. So, correct. And this is certainly something that I've personally experienced as well with my keto experiment. So starting is one thing, then keeping it up and keeping your ketone levels over 1 millimolar throughout the day for several weeks is a struggle for people. And a big thing there is, as you can guess, the cravings, because at some point you will get the cravings for high carb treats that you're used to. And that's something that we wanted to address with the product by making it a really tasty treat, chocolate that's truly satisfying. And the third one is keeping ongoing keto throughout normal life, throughout the first 2 or 3 weeks that you get adjusted to it, because we're busy people. We travel. We travel for work. We're busy in the mornings. We have families and hobbies and passions to look out for, and we have jobs that take us to places where we don't always have a good keto meal option. So what we wanted to create with the keto meal shake, with the ambronite keto meal shake, is something that's craving satisfying is easy to choose, and a product that fits and also improves the ketosis benefits, the ketogenic benefits. So very concretely, what it does, it increases the level of ketones in the blood measurably, even after just one meal. And you can actually measure this with a breath analyzer like Ketonix, or the gold standard, which I love to use. Oh, you have one there right now. Or the gold standard that I love to use, which is either the Abbott or the Precision Extra device, which essentially use as a blood measurement. Yeah, there you go. You also have one of those. Blood measurements are the gold standard, and whatever meal you can have that increases ketones also improves and accelerates the benefits, namely the fat burning benefits. So we wanted to create a product that not only fits but also accelerates the benefits of ketosis to make it easier to start and maintain.
Well, actually, I like the thing that I said it fits in, because I think a diet, just like sports, have to fit in your lifestyle, because a diet, and we're speaking of a way of living and not restricting calories. So the original sense of the word diet means way of lifestyle, so that it has to fit in your life and not to be another stressor. And because the reason why I showed this, the glucose and ketone measurement device, is that you're right, because what gets measured gets manageable. And so I actually, of course, I ate this and then I tested it, so if it affects ketosis. And yeah, because it has to work. Either it works or it doesn't work. Well, of course, there are always, like in everything, a certain percent of non-responders, but within me it works. And so, of course, I'm not the standard for everybody, but it works.
That's great.
So,
what were your measurements? I'd love to hear. Before and after our keto meal.
Yeah, well, I have to look it up to give you exact numbers, but as you said, you have to stay. Well, you're entering, just to make it brief. We're not doing a podcast about ketosis here, but just to be brief is the second thing, and so don't forget it, is to enter ketosis you have to be about 0.5 millimole per liter. And so then you have different stages of ketosis, where they want to just achieve weight loss, or if you want to be in the post-exercise ketosis and things like that. But what I measure, for people who are not familiar with the type of measuring, is you don't eat it and a second later you're in ketosis. So ketosis is a state you have to achieve, and then you want to act and eat according to ketosis to use your body's own ketones. You switch to a state where you start to burn fat instead of glucose. And for those who always say, but you need sugar for your brain. Yes, you do, but the body has the ability to do gluconeogenesis, which means he makes sugar out of fat. And so when you eat, and then an hour or 3 hours later, you can test how deep you're into ketosis. And that's what I did with this. I cannot tell you it's from by heart the exact number, but you can say if you're in ketosis or not. And by just eating this as a meal, being on the road, for example, and then testing, I can tell you I either stayed in ketosis, and so it didn't kick me out. So for me, it's the proof that it helps at least to stay in ketosis. I cannot say you exactly if it accelerates my ketosis, but at least it helps to maintain ketosis. And that's a cool thing, because being on the road, as you said, being busy, and you cannot fry bacon in your car. I mean, you could, but no, it's not. Yeah, so you can take eggs, boil or whatsoever, but sometimes you just need something, and before you take shitty dietary approaches and being at a truck stop or whatsoever, you just pull out the shake and drink it. And so you have at least stay in ketosis, what is absolutely a necessity if you are on a normal ketogenic diet and you're not performing on a let's say cycle ketogenic diet. So I highly recommend this to all the viewers. I'm not getting paid to say this, and I have no financial interest, but this is a very convenient thing of staying in ketosis while being on the road or being busy in your office or things like that. So, and what was the second thing? Yeah, I wanted to mention is I also think it helps with getting into ketosis, because from my, let's say, working with, for the listeners who don't know, I'm what's called in Germany a Heilpraktiker, and this is I think a proper translation would be kind of complementary and alternative medicine practitioner. That is, I don't work with clients only as a personal trainer and strength trainer. I only can treat and diagnose and do things like infusions, invasion, diagnose and treat illnesses with some restriction. And when I recommend people a ketogenic diet, they tell me that they struggle with something that is known as keto flu. That means when you start doing a keto diet lifestyle for the first time, you experience things like drowsiness or obstipation, constipation, or diarrhea, or brain fog and things. And that's the bottleneck to stay, whether people stick to the diet or not. So when they, and always, believe me, from my experience, they always say, I don't know what to eat. I cannot eat anything anymore, and say, what? Yeah, so there are so many things, but maybe the Franconians who love to drink a lot of beer, which is liquid bread, so they anyway, so yeah, you cannot drink this anymore and say, what should I eat? So and drink. I say, okay, this is a very handy thing to stick to it instead of eating shitty thing or grabbing the sweets or something like that. So I think it's a very cool thing, not only being on the road, being stressful, but to get into ketosis. So I cannot tell you if it really accelerates that. I haven't proven this, but I can for sure tell you, working with patients, that it helps in the first phase of surpassing this keto flu thing and going and sticking to a diet, and the already mentioned thing. So from my experience, so
I'm really glad to hear that, and that's exactly what we're also hearing from our users, and it's also what I personally use it for, because for me, when I'm starting keto from either a cyclical or a longer term period, it is a struggle for me to get into ketosis without it messing up my day or my week. So with the ambronite keto meal shake, we wanted to include the MCTs as part of the high grade mix of healthy fats that are proven, and everyone can find this online, that are proven to convert into ketones in our livers very rapidly, and they don't need to be enzymatically broken down. So that's what makes the MCTs that we also include in the product very powerful in helping people get into ketosis faster. What we're seeing from reports, we haven't had any on our website yet because we just launched the product, but the people who have been using the product, who are both experienced keto diet veterans and people who have just now wanted to try keto for the first time in their lives, what we're seeing is that people very rapidly get into over 0.5 and 0.6 millimolar per liter of ketones in their blood within the first day without cardio. And this is interesting because many people implement intermittent fasting, long-term adaptations over several days into a ketogenic diet. But with this product, people report regularly that they get into ketosis during the first day. Again, this is not medical advice, but this is what we're seeing right now, and this is what I certainly see in my own blood work. So I think there's a really big problem for people in starting and maintaining ketosis, and we wanted to make it easier. And I'm really happy to hear that it's helped for you, because after all, it is the individual experience that we're going after right now for everyone.
Absolutely. I just want to say for all the listeners who are not familiar with that, because I like to explain all the terms we use in the videocast, so there's no confusion. On the product it says MCT, and MCT stands for medium chain triglyceride. That means, can you you said, oh, you already explained it, but I just wanted to explain the term, the abbreviation, so the people don't get confused. And again, we cannot teach people anything. We just can help people start to think about special things and terms. And as you said, just to give a brief sum up, is medium chain triglycerides are is when we say medium, it means in comparison to other fats, and they are from a chemical point. We're not getting too detailed. It's a carbon structure, and the length of the carbon numbers of carbon atoms explains how fatty acids are labeled. So they're short, they're medium chained, and they're long chained fatty acids. And an MCT is a short chain. That means basically you cannot get fat by eating MCT oil or fat, which is, for example, to be found in coconut oil or things like that. So just to give the viewers and the listeners an idea what MCT oil is, and now they can do their own research and see if it's true what we are what knowledge bombs we are dropping. And
absolutely, that's a great short introduction.
And what I like to say about the thing is, actually it's labeled keto, but when you're not sticking to a keto diet, but let's say a more, for example, starting thing or convenient thing, if you don't have the discipline. Actually, there's no thing like discipline, but it's
I agree.
Yeah,
discipline is overrated.
Yeah, because either you want to do something or you want not to do it. But as people struggle with keto, I think this product is also suitable to a low carb diet. If you're performing a low carb diet, you can use it. You don't have to be in ketosis, I want to mention, to use your product, because when you're on a low carb diet, you can use it as well. It says you have carbohydrates compared to 100 grams, it's 6 grams of carbs. So it's also suitable for people who stick to just a low carb diet, with I highly recommend. It's because it's the most easy way to reduce excessive or shed off excessive body fat, and not to have to think too much of things. Just cut off your carbs, and you will probably, if you exercise a bit, you will lose body fat. So I think your products, all the products, not only the keto thing, are suitable also for people who stick to a low carb diet.
You're absolutely right. And many people ask me whether or not it's suitable for someone who is not interested in doing strict keto. And the answer is that if you have one keto meal shake during your day, when you're usually having a medium carb day, you're actually turning your net carb intake into a low carb day. So you're actually enjoying a low carb diet. So absolutely, many people use it as a single meal for breakfast or lunch, and they're in fact turning their daily diet into a low carb diet with very, very little effort. And it's just the fact that during one meal that they're, instead of eating 50 or 60 or 70 grams of carbs, now they're getting just 5 grams of net carbs. The keto meal shake is 72% of the energy is from fats, and the fats have been balanced to be optimal for keto and for low carb. And we also threw in a hefty amount of soluble fibers to make it very, very stomach friendly. We threw in a natural digestive enzyme, which keeps your stomach and gut happy, as well as
I wanted to mention now. So.
Yeah. and we can talk about that too. And we also included Probiotic, which is our own trademark proprietary product. It's an active probiotic strain to help our gut bacteria thrive, which is especially important especially in keto and low carb diets, where people might typically end up on the lower side of getting those healthy probiotics, prebiotics, and fiber, and the FODMAP soluble fibers that are required for thriving gut bacteria, which create our neurotransmitters, which create our healthy brain chemicals and our immunity. So the thing is, we really wanted to make something that's usable even for people who are not doing keto, who want to do a lower carb version of plant-based foods.
Yeah, correct. And you took the words out of my mouth, because I wanted to. I mean, this talk could go on forever, but we're almost coming to an end. But I wanted to mention and emphasize this, because it's really important not to get only in sufficient greens and minerals and so on, and but you have to have sufficient amount of digestive enzymes, because the thing is, you can get in what you want. If your body cannot break up all the micronutrients you're eating, doesn't matter which diet you stick to, you have you have your carbs, your proteins, and your fats, and you have, according to that, you have 3 basic enzymes. Of course, there are myriads of enzymes, but you have protease, you have lipase, and amylase, which breaks up your food. And so when you're eating good food, whatever good is to you, and you cannot break it up, it basically goes to the toilet, because it's
exactly.
And a product, I mean, of course your product's probably not the cheapest ones, but I mean, what is cheap? If it works, it is not cheap, because expensive is only something that does not work, because you pay a lot of money, and even when you only pay $5, it is expensive when it goes straight to the toilet. So when you invest in something that has, as you said, sufficient nutrients and the enzymes and the probiotic that creates a healthy gut environment, that, because you say, just to make it brief for people who are not familiar to this, you have certain bacteria in your gut, and bacteria is not necessarily bad. You have, as in the podcast, Paul Chek said, you have the good, the bad, and the ugly. That means you have beneficial ones, you have bad ones, and you have opportunistic ones. That means then the opportunistic ones depend on what you eat, and if you eat according to your genes and so on. But that's the cool thing I wanted to mention, but you already did it, that you always you even put enzymes in your process, which is really important, and I wanted to stress. And before we tell us about this, and then before I forget it, I just and I want to add that you tell us something about your ambrobite, which is a new product you came up, I think, so we don't forget this. So
like you just said, we're not what we eat, but we're what our bodies can use,
what
our bodies can actually absorb.
Yeah, correct.
And whenever people look at our products, the keto meal shake is starting from 5.5 euros per meal right now on our web store, ambronite.com. You can also get it on a monthly subscription, which is a bit less than 5 euros a meal. What you're talking about is fully absorbable nutrition, and it's not comparable to a supplement which doesn't have the natural compounds that allow your body to actually absorb it. And don't believe my words, you can just actually experience it yourself. I always love sharing facts with people and pointing them to relevant studies which have been controlled RCTs, actually credible scientific evidence. But the real truth is, it always comes down to finding what works for you and what makes your life easier and better, and helps you achieve your goals, and making sure that you're actually getting absorbable nutrients that have the soluble fibers, the enzymes, and the probiotics, like our products. It's an essential part of the puzzle. And to expand, you pointed out the ambrobite. We also, it's one of the products that we just brought out. And also the Ambro Greens, which is the morning greens drink for specifically gut health and greens needs. With the ambrobite, we wanted to create a healthy treat, and we wanted to make it a special moment within the day, because people have been asking us for like the kind of a tasty dessert type of product. So we did create the ambrobite, which is essentially a bar. I think I even have one right here. Looks like this. As you can see, it's a berry-based design. We put in a small strawberry and 5 cranberries into each of these bars. So it's also has a small blast of berries that make a little dance on your tongue. I think it's probably the most kind of a satisfaction-based product that we've built, and we also recognize that there are different moments throughout the day, so we wanted to bring out a plant-based, great-tasting option for those as well. But talking about what I didn't expect, but what we're kind of looking for is creating kind of a chocolate satisfaction experience for the keto meal shake, because that's what's missing for most people on keto. Like, okay, I'm eating all this bacon and cheese and whatnot, but where can I get like a treat that actually really scratches the itch for a tasty treat? So we wanted to create a deep, satisfying chocolate experience, and it's actually become, people are telling me that it's become their dessert even. So it's, in my opinion, an experience. It's really important to have those treats that fit your nutritional goals, but are also extremely satisfying, so that you don't veer off the path and throw everything into the garbage and eat a bucket load of donuts, because that will happen eventually. Like, we're all humans, and food is not supposed to be something to be feared or controlled or studied too much. It's supposed to be a major source of pleasure in our daily lives, and I sincerely believe that's what food also is for me and for a human experience. So that's what's so super important, to also have those. Remember that enjoyment is a part of health, and they're not opposed to each other.
Correct, because for most people who are not hardcore and struggle with certain diets, especially keto, they need something like that to makes it easier and to have fun doing it, because when they not have fun, they tend not to stick to it. And I want to add something to the keto shake. What for me is important is that it really dissolves very well in water, and because some shakes, they are good and they might taste well, but they are a pain in the ass to mix. And so even with water, and when you tell people you gotta drink this with water, and say no, and said no, it really, actually I was really surprised, but something, it stays a bit chunky, which I like, so you have those chunks, but if you wish, it dissolves really, really, really well in water. And this is a really important point for me when it comes to shakes, because as mentioned, most shakes do not dissolve well in water.
I fully agree.
Well, Simo, thanks in advance for this wonderful talk. It's so much pleasure talking to you, but all good things come to an end, and I always end the videocast with the question: when people don't know your brand, we've talked a lot of your brand, but where can they find you if they want dig into more information by your products? Where can they find you, online, offline? And so I can add this in the video, in the post-production. You will see this down here. And where can people find you?
Absolutely. So people can get in touch through ambronite.com/podcast, where I talk to world-class influencers on health. I'd love to also do an episode with you, because I really love your work. And you can also drop me a line at simo@ambronite.com. I'm really passionate about helping people thrive, and even though we're a big team and serve people all around the world now, I take a lot of time to individually reply to people, because I think it's a big part of what we are as a company, as our DNA, and my personal mission to help people thrive. And they can also check us out on Instagram. Our handle is @ambronite, and we also do reply each and every message there. So we love to talk to people, and we're not one of those brands who don't really, who just print, copy and paste blanket statements. Each and every email and message through all our channels gets read by real people and passed on to me if it's addressed to me. So I would be happy to get in touch with anyone about each and every one of these topics. I think as a collective, as a collective of people who want to build healthier lives for themselves and others, I think the best ideas and the best debates are shared ones. So that's definitely what I believe.
Absolutely. I think that's where people can distinguish whether a brand is. I mean, every brand and everyone needs to make money to live in this world, but there's a difference if you feel the passion and the love a company yeah, and spreads, and if they have a real connection to their consumers, because sharing is caring. And if you're not only interested in making money, you're, as you said, I really appreciate this approach, because you say this lives from your interaction and the feedback of your customers, what they like and what they dislike, instead of just throwing out some shitty garbage products just to have, from an economical point of view, be good. But good means for me being in touch with the consumer and to see what works and what doesn't. So I really like this approach. Well, thanks again, Simo, and I end the interview always by saying thanks to our listeners and viewers. Stay healthy, and maybe there will be a round 2. Who knows? So I look forward to that, because there's so much to talk about, and we cannot put everything in 1 or 1.5 hours. So maybe we do a round 2. So
thank you so much, Bernd. It's been a pleasure.